Hey everyone, Brush the Hair Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Kaytranada album, 99.9%. Kaytranada is a Montreal producer who has been at it for a while, but now with this new record over here, he is putting out his commercial debut for XL Recordings. Pretty big label, pretty big jump. Nice, moment in the career there. And on this album, he has amassed some pretty impressive features. He seems to have a little bit of everything for everybody. We have Kareem Riggins and Bad Bad Not Good on here for those who like their hip-hop fused with jazz. Also Aluna George, as well as Little Dragon for those who enjoy pop and indie pop and dance pop. We have a little neo soul and some house on here. Appearances from Craig David and Anderson .Paak for you R&B heads. With all these names on here, there has to be at least one great song or a great single or something. So I went into this album expecting some good music, but I'm always kind of skeptical of these producer-curated albums. They're often inconsistent, have a little bit of filler, some of the performances are so-so. There's definitely a lot here, though, for people who are aspiring producers and production buffs and beat nuts. Kaytranada on this album showcases a level of versatility that I think most producers can only pray to achieve. But he just reaches so far and wide on this record that the album ends up feeling more like a resume than it does an LP. Because across the 15 tracks here, he does everything but specializes in nothing, except for maybe good mixing practices and resonant bass and very crisp percussion. And I do appreciate the effort that he makes to have some of the tracks here flow together cohesively, like they segue into one another occasionally. And I think it's great that on 99.9%, Kaytranada was able to bring a lot of different music styles and vibes together under one roof and have them coexist pretty effectively. There's nothing on this album that seems so far outside of his talent level that it sounded awful or just that he shouldn't have done it. There are a few underwhelming vocal guests, but their appearances weren't really anything that I wasn't already anticipating given my familiarity with their previous work. People like Sid of the internet as well as Goldlink. And there are some collaborations on here that I wish were fleshed out a little more into not only a more structured and more superior song, but just because it felt like there was chemistry there and it should have led to something more than just simply a 2-minute track, given the fantastic drumming on the song where Kareem Riggins appears. I wish that track was longer. I wish Bad Bad Not Good had a little more presence on their cut too. It feels less like a live performance or a collaboration and more like the band is kind of simply being sampled. But on the tracks that I went into expecting something good because I already enjoyed the artist, I wasn't disappointed, and often I was really surprised at how well Kaytranada was actually able to cater to the sound and the style of the person he was working with. Case in point, Craig David, someone who I haven't listened to probably in a decade. And Kaytranada does a fantastic job of laying him on a track where he has that 2000s era R&B sound, but he makes the instrumental a little psychedelic with these kind of ghostly vocal samples. The track featuring Little Dragon at the end sounded just like a cut that could have made it onto their last full-length LP with these driving dance rhythms and just very smooth lead vocals. I also like the very soulful, bubbly, and kind of futuristic Glowed Up featuring Anderson .Paak. That was a pretty big single from this record, and it holds up within the context of the album. And the track Drive Me Crazy surprised me not only with a kind of sparkling, spacey banger beat, but also a very charismatic verse from Vic Mensa. And the song also has this kind of eerie, spectacular beat change up around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. I don't really feel like I loved this track, but I was impressed with the sounds that it brought together. The song was kind of like a fusion of the bubblegum house beats from the first Disclosure record with the kind of obscure crate diggery of an artist like Madlib. And Kaytranada is actually able to consistently bring that house vibe for the last third of this record, just all of a sudden we kind of transition into a totally different style of electronic and dance music at one point in the album. And while he sounds just as comfortable here, I do think the material does leave a little to be desired. I wish it was a little punchier, left a stronger impression, though much of this type of music does just simply read to me as something that would be played in like a dressing room at the mall. Just very airy and inconspicuous. It wasn't terrible. I mean, it sounded just as decent as many other artists that make this very same type of music, which is kind of funny considering that this is not really his calling card. This is not his MO. It sounds like he's merely dabbling in this kind of music, and he's doing it well, or doing it just about as well as anybody else who's making it. And that's the thing. Even though the record does feel, again, like a resume and just merely like Kaytranada showing off everything that he can do, he compliments all of his guests really well on this record. And I have no doubt that in the coming year or so, this album is going to earn him a lot of production credits, because given how well he seems to work with so many different people on this album, who wouldn't want a beat from him? Especially given he had a production credit on the latest Chance mixtape. I mean, it was one of my least favorite tracks on the tape, but the instrumental really had nothing to do with why I didn't like the song. I mean, the singing was terrible and the hook was awful. The album is decent. I mean, Kaytranada is certainly talented, but he didn't necessarily come together with a cohesive and a consistent record here. You know, I would love to hear an album with a producer guiding it as talented as this, who is just kind of really taking the reins here and playing director, and the guests he has on the record are just kind of merely playing a small role in a larger piece. One last point I kind of want to make about the record is that I guess the reason it's not really impressing me as a whole is that a lot of it doesn't really feel all that memorable to me. I mean, part of my feelings on the record, I think, can be boiled down to one moment on the album where we kind of have this vocal snippet, this skit, where someone needs to be reminded of who Kaytranada is, like... And that's kind of how I feel. Like, in a year or so, I most likely will need to be reminded of this album, because there's just not really a strong sense of personality or a strong sonic identity to it, you know? As I said, I feel like I'm going to see this guy's face and see this guy's name more in the future, because it sounds like he complements the artists that he collaborates with really well. However, this album... it's a little all over the place. It's kind of like a chameleon, you know? It's hiding in the background. It's blending in. It's not trying to stand out necessarily. I'm feeling a decent, strong 6 on this record. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like. If you like, please subscribe. Please don't die, because if you do, then you can't watch the videos, god damn it. Kaytranada, 99.9%, forever.